3 Canadians could now spend a decade behind bars for the crime of supporting a peaceful protest against the government.
Albertans and Canadians, there can be no compromise of our fundamental human rights. We call on Canadians to rise up and peacefully take back our freedom.
And then I heard about this slow roll going to Coutts, so I thought there's something we can do. There was convoys coming from everywhere yet, telling us, like, guys, hold that line, we're coming.
I mean, it wasn't just because of us, but, farmers were blocking roads. Farmers were, causing ruckus just about everywhere.
Well, it wasn't just Coutts. The province was in uproar. There was slow rolls, there was blockade, there was protests all over the province. We were done with this government trying to maintain control over a situation that they had completely lost control over.
And that is why tonight I've informed the president of the party of my intention to step down as leader of the United Conservative Party.
That was a big reflection of the Coutts supporters that voted him out. If we don't get involved, how do we hold accountability? We were just doing what everybody was doing. 65,000 supporters came through Coutts and Milk River in them 17 days. As peaceful protesters that we have a right to do, and they want to get 10 years imprisonment, what did we do that was criminal besides protesting?
We're charged with mischief over 5,000, and they're pursuing with direct indictment. They're looking for 5 to 10 years. Three dads, Alex is a grandpa. It's politically motivated.
It didn't come out right away that the goal was to charge us for 10 years prison time. Anything could happen. I could go to prison for 10 years. Let it even be 5 years. Let it even be 2 years. When I'm thinking of my family, thinking of my children, I don't want to miss a week without them.
It's 100% from a place of suppression. These men stood up to their government, and there is no greater crime than standing up to your government.
George Janzen, I guess, is a married guy with 8 kids and a wonderful wife that lives in Alberta and loves every bit of it.
Well, I'm Huigenbos, small town councillor for the town of Fort Macleod, a dad of 4 kids and husband to a wonderful woman.
Alex Van Herk, farmer south of Fort Macleod. 7 kids now and 7 grandkids. Another one on the way.
Sydney Fazard with Rebel News. Today, we sit down with Alex Van Herk, Marco Van Huigenbos, and George Janzen. 3 Albertans the government is now prosecuting for being part of the 2022 Freedom Convoy movement. RCMP charged them with mischief over $5,000 for allegedly, quote-unquote, being key participants of the Coutts border blockade. Each could now spend a decade in prison for something they have a right to in Canada, supporting a peaceful protest. Rebel News has partnered with the Democracy Fund, a registered civil liberties charity, to crowdfund the legal defense of these 3 men. Donations through your generous support at Coutts3.com assure their families aren't burdened with the cost of hiring the lawyers needed to fight these charges. To donate and receive a charitable tax receipt or to stay updated on their legal proceedings, go to Coutts3.com. After 2 years of largely ignored by or smeared by the political class weekend lockdown protests, in January 2022, the Freedom Convoy sparked a spontaneous wave of national grassroots demonstrations that went on for weeks, until Prime Minister Justin Trudeau unconstitutionally invoked unprecedented emergency legislation to deploy riot police on peacefully assembling Canadians and seize bank accounts of alleged supporters.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. The act is to be used sparingly and as a last resort.
What we are facing today is a threat to our democratic institutions, to our economy, and to peace, order, and good government in Canada. This is unacceptable. It cannot stand, and it will not stand.
Criminal mischief charges were laid against several of the Freedom Convoy organizers in Ottawa, such as Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, for their role in organizing protests in the nation's capital, with Leach having spent 49 days in pretrial custody, or jail. But Coutts was a different story altogether. The blockade began approximately the same time as the Freedom Convoy had arrived in Ottawa, both united in peacefully protesting and seeking an end to the government's COVID-19 pandemic response. What began as a slow-roll trucker convoy near the small border town of Coutts, population roughly 300, evolved into an unprecedented 18-day protest at Alberta's largest international border crossing with the United States. Tens of thousands attended during those 18 days, most from a secondary protest site at the police barrier near the town of Milk River, 18 miles away from Coutts. This formed after RCMP set up a quarantine zone around the blockade to prevent more vehicles from joining. Those trapped within could not return with their trucks if they left, many forced to camp out in their vehicles through harsh winter conditions while isolated from the world. Alex, Marco, and George were amongst these few dozen individuals who arrived and remained at the Coutts blockade before this RCMP barrier was established. They held the line for weeks as a showing of solidarity with the National Freedom Convoy movement. The day the blockade left Coutts, RCMP alleged in situation reports obtained through access to information requests that 20 individuals were quote-unquote keyed, likely just a list of everyone trapped in RCMP's isolation zone, and suggested Critical Infrastructure Defense Act, mischief, and conspiracy charges were in the works for these individuals. Yet, 7 months later, government prosecutors decided to criminally pursue only 3 of these individuals, Alex, Marco, and George, who are now publicly labeled as the quote-unquote key participants of the blockade and could now face 10 years in prison each. They say these charges are unwarranted and political backlash over the successes of the Coutts blockade, meant to set an example for those who aim to peacefully protest their own government.
And to our children, so loved and precious, most of them unaware that we are in the fight of our life, you are the reason we cannot fail. We call on the Premier to do the right thing. The people have spoken. This is not about which side you are on or political clout. This fight is for the freedoms of all. Albertans and Canadians, there can be no compromise of our fundamental human rights. We call on Canadians to rise up and peacefully take back our freedom.
So how did Alex, Marco, and George, 3 small farmer towns southern Albertans with lives and families of their own, find themselves at the heart of a historic national movement that altered the course of Canadian politics and the global pandemic response? The mainstream media, RCMP, and politicians smeared those at the Coutts protests as a group of violent extremist vigilantes at the border. But in this report, we see for ourselves who Alex, Marco, and George are, and how they saw the Coutts blockade from the inside over 2 years ago.
We're here for all Albertans. Canadians, we're here fighting for the freedoms of not us, but our kids, our grandkids, the future of this province, this country. This is not something that is going to last for a short time. This is something we feel is so important that we are prepared to put everything on the line.
I was born in Holland, in Ede, in 1996 at the age of 6. I immigrated with my family to Canada, and we settled just north of Fort Macleod on the farm.
I was born in Mexico with a Mennonite background people. There's a lot of traveling and moving and seeking new places to make new starts. When I was 2 years old, my parents decided we were going to move to Canada for a brighter future and just to make a more successful go at it in life.
My dad was a carpenter. My mom came from a farming history out of the Lethbridge area. We moved to Fort Macleod when I was 14 and just loved the farming aspect and the freedom and the openness here and the opportunity.
As a young 20-year-old, on the weekends, you went out with friends, and I met Elizabeth at one of these events. I could see and hear that she had just arrived from Holland. The accent and the look and the way they dressed, and very quickly we hit it off and got married in May. That is 9 years. In those 9 years, we have 4 kids, 4 children together. One girl and 3 boys. I had always argued with Elizabeth on the amount. I'd said 6, and she had said 4. So somewhere in the middle is 5. So she's got her number, and I might have to push a little bit for mine.
Met my wife. When I was working in the framing industry in BC, we would fill up gas every day. and she was the gas station attendant there. Finally got the courage, I guess, to ask her out, and it took a few times. It took a few no's before it was a yes, but she was originally from Iowa, and she loved the prairies, and so we decided to move back to Alberta and actually started a butcher shop. And actually we were raising calves in the town of Fort Macleod, and to the point where all of a sudden they were getting out, and the town policeman would come and say, Alex, hey, you can't do this here, right? It's like, okay, so we bought an acreage south of Fort Macleod. Whatever happened, whatever God gave us is what we took. We were blessed to have 7 beautiful children, and yeah, the foundation grew, and like say, and now I see in short 5 years, I have 4 of my kids married, and like say with 7 grandkids, and life is good.
I did know my wife beforehand from Ontario, but their family and our family decided to move to Bolivia for a year, and that's where we got connected. Obviously, we knew each other from before, and once you know each other, it's pretty nice in a very foreign place to get together with something that you know. And so obviously that's where we started dating. After about a year of living out there, we moved back to Ontario and decided we were going to get married. You know when you connect with someone, when there's someone that takes you seriously, that listens and doesn't take you for granted, it's a wonderful place to be.
And Fort Macleod has always been good for us. Like the community is beautiful, the people are good, and like I said, there is not I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in Alberta. And today we feed 6,000 head. Run 350 cow-calf pairs, farm about 3,000 acres. I seen an opportunity to work with my kids, and not many people have that opportunity. All my boys work here on the feedlot and on the ranch with us.
In 2003, my wife and I decided that we were going to move west here to Alberta, find a new place to live and just make a new start. And we're really glad we did. Obviously, we stayed here and made a good go of it. In general, people care more about relationship more than just being busy all the time. People are much more relaxed, much more willing to visit, just a peace-loving type of group of people here in Alberta. They're just simply kind people. And I love those type of people, down-to-earth type of people.
Pre-COVID, it was business, work, and family, or family, business, work. That's how Elizabeth would like me to say that. Bringing kids into this world and raising them in values that are near and dear to us are very important for us, and that's something that brings us into this whole situation as well, as to what responsibilities do I have and does society have in regards to their children.
Around the world, a variety of dramatic measures are being implemented to contain the spread of COVID-19. The situation is very serious, and we are taking action more effectively to protect Albertans against this pandemic. Last night, we held a meeting of our Emergency Management Committee of Cabinet, which authorized me to use all powers necessary to keep Albertans safe. That's why today I am announcing that Alberta is declaring a state of public emergency in response to COVID-19.
Obviously, initial reaction, we were all concerned about what was happening. Like as a dad, the last thing you want is this type of thing to affect your family and to have anyone be hurt. No one cares more about our families than we do ourselves.
And we were all kind of first taken aback by it. Like you hear this pandemic, we better prepare for this. Like we, listen, if things do get locked down, we bought extra food. We took precautions. We said the elderly, we should prepare. My mom is 92 years old. The economic impact of it was definitely big in the beginning. When the COVID virus first came out, all our packing plants were shut down, so we weren't able to ship cattle. So we had to retain a lot of the cattle for 3 or 4 months before they can get caught up on them.
Life went on. This is Southern Alberta. Even Alex, my good friend Alex, I remember they were pretty terrified for a week or two, and he'll never admit to that, and I always bug him, but they were like, nobody was allowed at the feedlot for a couple of weeks because this thing was crazy, and until we started seeing the inconsistencies. This being Fort Macleod, in the rural communities, there was also very little enforcement, and even people that might have bought into it all were very reluctant to try to enforce that because they knew that the majority of people here had their own views on that, and you respected that.
I mean, technically, if we wanted to go according to the rules, we shouldn't have been together as a family. How ridiculous does that sound, right? We eat, we breathe the same air, we eat the same food, we wash the same clothes together. But when so many innocent children and older people, who've died in hospitals without their families around them, it hurts me to know that children couldn't see mom or dad die or be there with them. And even just thinking of my own family, not being able to visit my parents in Ontario, where they are right now. Those things hurt, It's hurt a lot of people.
I love spending time with my grandkids. I love taking them to the water parks and stuff like that, doing things with them. But we weren't able to do that. We weren't able to take them unless we were vaccinated. They were making a point of, if somebody wasn't masked, there was people, private individuals going to our church, sitting outside of our church and videoing us if we didn't come out with the mask on. People were obsessed with this. The truckers, I look at the truckers, the poor truckers, they suffered for 2 years. They couldn't go into a restaurant. They couldn't go use a washroom in a restaurant. They had to order their food through a drive-through, walking through there. They couldn't go anywhere to eat. And they delivered our food and everything we needed, our essentials to stay alive for them 2 years.
For some people, government is their God. They listen to government. Government tells them to do this. They believe government. So when you view government in such a manner, and the government puts the fear of God, and no disrespect, into you in that manner regarding COVID or regarding a pandemic or regarding the rules and what could happen, there's many horror stories, even in our local communities of kids and how they were being treated. I know parents that would lock their kids in their room for 2 weeks when they got COVID. I remember having to decide whether I would run in October of 2021 for my second term as councillor. And that was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. It was going to be a very tough job for me to represent my community as an unvaccinated councillor. I still ended up making the decision to run, and I'm thankful I did. It was a personal struggle for me as well as to where I stood personally, and maybe that wasn't the popular view, or maybe that wasn't the view or the position of the majority of my municipality. So I would carefully push that viewpoint, but I do remember it being a very stressful time in the last half of 2021.
Sheila Gunn-Reid for Rebel News, and I'm here in the pouring rain in January. The streets are lined up and people are showing their support for a truck convoy from BC all the way to Ottawa to protest the vaccine mandates being imposed on Canadian truckers.
Any glimmer of hope was hope, right? At the end of the day, it felt really good knowing that there were other people that felt the same way that we did as a family. Then just see that there's, a group of people that stand on the same side as we do was a beautiful thing to see.
Individuals were fighting their own little battles. Everybody had their own little issue. The Freedom Convoy and the border blockades united that struggle. It took those struggles of Albertans and Canadians and pointed them in a direction, and everybody was able to come together. They were not represented, and this was the only way after 18 months of lockdowns and emergency measures. This was the only way they felt they could be heard, was to show up, was to wave their flag, and what it was. And this all in the middle of a harsh winter, right? We've seen the support the Freedom Convoy got as it rolled through the country. Thousands, tens of thousands came out.
I planned on following that convoy to Ottawa. That was my original thing. I was thinking, we need to support this movement. And I thought, that's a long ways. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I have a business to run, I have a family, and it's like, yeah, it's tough to go all the way to Ottawa. So then I said, I'm going to watch it anyway and support it. And then I heard about this slow roll going to Coutts. And I said, here's something we can support. It's local. And we could always come back to feed cattle, and because it was a day trip. And so I thought, there's something we can do.
You've already heard about the trucker convoy, but that's not just happening in Ottawa. You see, that sparked something across the nation. And right now, we've got a trucker convoy. It's a slow roll, a Truckers for Freedom rally that's taking place at the border, stopping travel between Canada and the United States.
It was the most enjoyable time I've had in many years, just to see so many loving, freedom-loving people come together and be human again. We began to share our feelings again without feeling like we're going to be judged for it. Here's a group of people who have come together with one common theme, just wanting simply to be able to decide for themselves whether they want to stay home or not.
The excitement, the people on the roads, there was families and kids and flags and bags of food and cookies and everything along the highway going to Coutts. Like, I thought, man, people want this. They feel that they can move again, that they're doing something that, and I think everybody felt alone. For 2 years, they were locked up thinking, am I the only one that's seeing what's going on? That then when this started, people were living. After 2 years of suppression, they were actually living.
All across the board, they were implementing this vaccine mandate and essentially letting people go if they did not comply. I really think the travel mandates and the border restrictions really set the stage for what happened earlier this year. We had no voice, we had no representation, federally, provincially. That's why we were there. That's why thousands were there.
Very unique. Like, I don't even know, like, it was so unplanned. Like, it was such a natural or organic movement that happened. Who would ever thought that, let's go block a border? Who would think of something like that? And it happened. And we finally found something that pricked our government or helped them to see that, okay, these people are now serious.
And I thought this is an opportunity to peacefully protest. Did I agree with blocking the border? I didn't think it was right to block it. No, it got blocked. It happened. And we knew, right? We seen what was happening in the mainstream media in the last years, and we knew the mainstream media was not in our favor. And we knew they were going to paint us as extremists and far right. We knew that was going to happen. And that's why right from the onset, we said, we're not going to work with media, the mainstream media, because we know how the picture they're going to paint. So we chose to work with news media like Rebel News and Western Standard and Freedom Central. And the mainstream was, you could tell they're paid off by the globalists. And when they're getting subsidized by the Liberal government, who do you think they're going to work for, right? They're going to print off what they want the public to see and hear.
January the 29th, the first day of the day of the slow roll, I left behind a three-week-old baby, not knowing that I wouldn't be in contact with my wife, I would be in contact, but I wouldn't see them for 4 weeks was, for me, the most stressful part. Having a young family at home and not being there for 18 days definitely came with its consequences and additional stress and concerns.
Today, the COVID Cabinet Committee has approved a number of measures that constitute a careful and prudent plan to remove Alberta's public health restrictions.
If the current trends reverse themselves and if we see a significant and sustained increase in pressure on our hospitals, we may have to pause some of these measures. But we are determined.
He has not changed really. He's backpedaling like crazy. He's making excuses for what happened in the past, and he's continuing to lie. And I've seen this coming, that with future, he's leaving an open door with future variants to put in mandates again. More mandates. So we got to come or stick this out until all mandates are lifted permanently.
Everyone knew we're in it for the long haul because there were so many what ifs. There were so many if this, then this, if this, then that. A lot of ifs, and we've heard a lot of ifs for the last 2 years at this point.
It was a phased approach with a lot of triggers, and these triggers could go both ways, and it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for where we were as a province and where we were as individuals. We were done with that. We were done with this government trying to maintain control over a situation that they had completely lost control over.
People were not done. They were determined that these mandates had to be lifted. And they weren't happy. Nobody was happy with what he had offered. And it wasn't enough. It just needed to end. Like, the mandates needed to end. We needed to move on and look at ways to move on and continue on with life a different way than what they were doing, because it wasn't working.
We're having this site behind us moved. We have to move the protesters from this site because it's unsafe. Regardless about the status of the site down there in Coutts at the border, I have been told that we're opening traffic.
What do you say to that?
They're being provided a lawful place, and that's the situation that I would say is go to your lawful place to protest.
We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. There's going to be more coming, okay?
All right, guys, Sid Fazard here. We're back on the scene, but this time we're not down there in Coutts. We're actually here at the police barrier that's been set up here in Milk River. These guys and the supplies that they wanted to bring to Coutts were being denied right here. But that actually turned out to be kind of an awe-inspiring thing for a lot of these people, because they saw how many people were trying to go down there to support Coutts and what they're doing.
Well, it wasn't just Coutts. It was, the province was in uproar. There was slow rolls, there was blockade, there was protests all over the province in alignment with Coutts, with other blockades, and with Ottawa. I think on the front line of Milk River there was more structure. You know, they would do a huge breakfast every morning, and I remember when we would have like oatmeal or something in Coutts, I would get in my truck and go to Milk River because I knew they'd have bacon and sausage and a couple other things going. So that was, I had the ability to do that. But I was able to see the support. I was able to talk to these individuals. I was able to feel the support. I think for a lot of people in Coutts, they were going off of Telegram or other social medias to see it, but they never really seen the Milk River blockade, because the RCMP's focus was to keep a lot of people outside of Coutts. And a lot of their resources went to maintaining those checkpoints and that blockade. The support we received from Milk River and just from Southern Alberta and from all over Alberta was phenomenal and encouraging, and obviously an essential part of the success of Coutts.
And I look at the numbers that were coming every day and the contacts that we were getting from support from Northern Alberta, Northern BC. There was convoys coming from everywhere yet telling us, like, guys, hold that line, we're coming to help you. And the whole atmosphere of the people, like, you gotta remember, this is a grassroots movement here that nobody knew each other. And the peace and the unity that was there and the organization of how it went and how it grew was absolutely phenomenal. Like, you couldn't have done it better if you planned it. Like, I think back about it, of the days there, and it's like, man, I seen kids, I seen families, and there's so many things that I seen there. It was just, wow. And everybody was so happy that they were living. They could actually live again after 2 years of, like I say, of suppression and lockdowns, that they could actually live free and felt free.
I mean, it wasn't just because of us, but, you know, farmers were blocking roads. Farmers were, causing ruckus just about everywhere. The amount of support that we received from outside and people constantly coming to encourage and bring more food, and especially in Milk River there, like, I think people take for granted. Milk River was actually as important, if not more important, than the Coutts border blockage. I mean, I personally am so thankful for the Milk River group and the organizers over there for what they did for us. It was hard for us being there, but it's hard for our families at home, wondering what's going to happen next, right? Especially as you were starting to hear, the RCMP and the police doing things that were not kosher.
So a search warrant was conducted last night it was at approximately midnight, 12:30, where 3 trailers associated to a group that had arrived separate to the original protesters, but ended up being a part of this whole situation. And this group, we conducted a search warrant into 3 trailers associated to them, resulting in the seizure of weapons, firearms, ammunition. There are people with all sorts of opinions, but the truth is that there's a heavy stash of weapons, and these weapons were brought by people who had the intent on causing harm. And there are also people here who are here to protest, and they very likely didn't know what was going on here. But that is not up to me to decide as to what level things are at.
After the events of yesterday and the news released that the RCMP made arrests and come forward with, and the arrests resulted in long-arm firearms, handguns, and protective equipment being unearthed, we as the Coutts Convoy have decided that as a peaceful protest and to maintain that narrative, we will be rolling out tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And we thank everybody for all their support, for their prayers, and we hope that we have started something that will have such wide-reaching effects that governments will continue to go back to the grassroots, listen to the constituents, and that these mandates, these restrictive mandates will soon be eliminated.
This is the scene right now. The tractors, combines, the heavy machinery, the semi-trucks, everything is packing up right now, and they're heading off like they said they would yesterday. They will find other things to do. They will find other ways to protest. And of course, these guys have explicitly made it clear that this is peaceful, and that's how it has to be if they want to find the resolve that Canadians always do want to find.
And coming home, it was, a real blessing, to know that I'm staying home. I'm going to now be a dad again, because it's hard to be a dad when you're out in Coutts there. I mean, we later on found out that things aggressively got better, but we didn't know that. So in some ways, we felt like we lost the whole thing.
For me, it was a different Alberta. It was a different form of cloud I came back to, and there was a different feel, especially in the circles, in my community, and the people I interacted with. There was more hope. There was less fear. Life is 100% changed, and there's many things that haven't changed. I still have a beautiful wife and 4 great kids.
I met my wife in Lethbridge, and first thing we did, we went for a good lunch, and with a bunch of my kids, and so it was definitely a relaxing lunch, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, it was a long 17 days. Like, it was a long stretch out, 17 days. I was looking forward to seeing the family and the kids, and I mean, a lot of them had come down and see me in while I was down there, but it's still just the sleeping conditions, the cold, the weather, everything, right? You're like you're living in a suitcase. And I was excited to go home because I thought, okay, but I still felt a little bit let down. It's like, okay, we're here now. We came with in support of this, and to help these guys, that started this blockade to try to get these mandates lifted. And I mean, there was things starting to change, and there was, talk of let mandates come in. Thankfully, they continued after we left Coutts, and the mandates were lifted in Alberta.
While 51% of the vote passes the constitutional threshold of a majority, it clearly is not adequate support to continue on as leader. And that is why tonight I have informed the president of the party of my intention to step down as leader of the United Conservative Party.
I truly believe, because of what happened in Coutts, the unity of people, the same group of people that supported Coutts got involved in the political side of it since Coutts. And I believe when that last AGM took place for the voting of Kenny, that was a big reflection of the Coutts supporters that voted him out. We took the stand to stand and hold the line in Coutts for everybody, for what the government was imposing on us. If we don't get involved, how do we hold accountability?
Sidney Fazard for Rebel News, and today we're outside Lethbridge Courthouse, where 3 individuals, the RCMP have alleged them to be key participants of the Coutts blockade. Well, those 3 individuals have been charged with mischief over $5,000.
And being one of the ones that were more vocal than some of the others, I knew if they were going to pick on someone, it would be some of those that were most verbal. It didn't come out right away that the goal was to charge us for 10 years of prison time. And so at first it felt to me like, well, I know we didn't do anything wrong, so why would I be worried? But as I can see, time progressing and seeing the seriousness of this whole thing, it probably worries me more now. Still knowing that I'm innocent, still knowing that I did what was right.
We're charged with mischief over 5,000, and they're pursuing with direct indictment. They're looking for 5 to 10 years. They've made it personal. They've made it about myself and 2 other individuals. To go after 3 family men, three dads, Alex is a grandpa, it's politically motivated. It's 100% from a place of suppression. These men stood up to their government, and there is no greater crime than standing up to your government.
All we did was protest. There was trucks that blocked the border, yeah, but we didn't do anything of a mischief. We didn't damage anything. We didn't do anything of violence. We didn't cause any violence. What did we do that was criminal besides protesting? We were just doing what everybody was doing. 65,000 supporters came through Coutts and Milk River in them 17 days.
So the prosecutors have decided to proceed by indictment, which gives Mr. Van Herk, Mr. Janzen, and Master Huigenbos the right to be tried by a jury of their peers. There will be no deals and no concessions of any kind.
There's a presumption of innocence in this country, which is fundamental to the natural sense of justice and is fundamental to our democracy. Obviously, these folks need to be presumed innocent until the Crown does their work to prove or attempt to prove that they're guilty.
But again, it's about my family. So if this does come to pass, it's going to affect my family. And it already has, emotionally, mentally, because it's stressful going through a time like this, especially knowing that anything could happen. Anything could happen. I could go to prison for 10 years. Let it even be 5 years. Let it even be 2 years. When I'm thinking of my family, thinking of my children, I don't want to miss a week without them, let alone years.
My family obviously very concerned with these charges, and there's always the worst case scenario. There's a sentence passed down that would put us in a federal penitentiary for 2, 3, 4. That would be very tragic for my family, considering the age of my kids. Their dad would be gone for a number of years. I've already sensed a bit of that and what that could look like with these 4 individuals that are in jail and how that has affected their families. And that's obviously something we want to avoid at all costs.
And am I scared? I'm somewhat scared, yeah, definitely. I put trust that nothing happens by chance. God will, at the end of the day, control everything. And if it's God's will that I go to jail, I guess I have to go to jail. It'd be devastating, right? And as I said, my business, everything would be devastating. That's what I don't understand, how they're asking for the full extent of the law for what we did. And all we did was stand up as citizens supporting a demonstration as peaceful protesters that we have a right to do, and they want to get 10 years imprisonment?
We would lose everything. We would lose our home. We're not mortgage free, obviously. And, I'm the sole income earner in our home. And if I'm in prison, obviously I'm not making an income for our family. My wife and I decided right from the get-go that we wanted to homeschool children, and I would be the supplier of the needs for the family when it comes to work and income, as far as that part is concerned. And I intended to stay that way. But obviously, if I'm put into prison, that directly affects our dreams and our visions, right? And it's concerning, that's for sure.
We felt that we needed to support these demonstrators that were down in Coutts and stand up for that. But now they want to take away my kids and my grandkids' opportunity to be with their grandfather, their father, My business is going to suffer from it. If the government is able to get away with doing this and they are able to indict us on these charges, and we go to jail for whether 5 or 10 years, then I can't imagine what this world is going to look like when I get out of jail.
You know, my wife, she's had many questions of why you, and I've questioned that, why me? You know, there was individuals that were older than me that I would have looked up there. Why was it me? To me, the part that is really frustrating, the part that my family really struggles with is there was a border blockade, and I was there. I was a participant I was a protester at that protest. We weren't professional protesters. We weren't like we had blockaded borders before or after. Why were we there? We were there due to a government gone rogue, and that has never been addressed. And until that gets fully addressed, we're only discussing half of the story.
Marco is more than just a town councilor, more than just a family man. He is taken to speaking on behalf of many of the people that would find themselves at these events, many of the people, I imagine, like yourselves. And I'd like to give the...
At what point do I let these charges get in the way of me living my life and my family living our life? The struggle is, it's become big. I've gotten very involved in politics, in the political side of things. I'm involved in many organizations. The other day I got invited to speak at a Rebel event. I feel obligated, I feel responsible to get the message out, to continue to advocate for the rights and freedoms of myself, my family, but I also feel I represent more of a community than I did a year ago. Everybody has their fights, everybody has their situations. It's not always easy. Stay strong. And to Rebel News and involvement of Rebel through all of this, it's been phenomenal. I've gotten to meet and become acquainted with many great guys like Sid here, and I think I've almost met everybody from Rebel now. I met David Menzies the other day, and that being said, what Rebel News is doing for us through truckerlawyer.ca, it's phenomenal. They're supporting us. They're supporting the cause, and that's not going unnoticed. So there's a big thank you on my part there, and from my family as well. But the biggest thing is we need to stay in the fight, stay encouraged, and stay involved.
It's amazing to see how we've been able to bring people together, freedom-loving people, their family. My family has gotten much bigger. It makes me proud to be Canadian, that's for sure. I don't know if it ever really hit home like it did after Coutts, but I've never been so proud to be Canadian as I was during that time, just to see how many Canadians rose up, whether it be financially, whether it be in support of just coming by and driving by, whether bringing food, whether just simply praying for us. It made me proud to be Canadian. I'm proud to be Canadian. It's really good to see.
And I always say, support these more news media like Rebel News and these ones that actually have the truth and are willing to dig into the truth of what's actually happening in the world. And if people don't realize how serious this is, if we lose this, it sets a stage that I don't think anybody's going to have the fight in them or the dare to go protest against the evil and tyranny that's coming. That's the thing. I feel that they're trying to set a stage here that if they charge us with this extent and the charges stick, then they're going to set an example that they'll never have anybody protest or peacefully protest against what government mandates and tyranny is happening.
Rebel News will be covering their trial through and through in person from the Lethbridge Courthouse, expected in April of this year. To keep up to date on their story, go to Coutts3.com. Rebel News has also partnered with the registered civil liberties charity, the Democracy Fund, to crowdfund the legal defense for these three men. To help cover these legal expenses or to stay up to date with their proceedings, go to Coutts3.com. For Rebel News, Sydney Fizzard. The only way we're able to do this work is through your generous donations. And today, you can go to Coutts3.com to donate to our independent coverage. We don't take big bailout money from the government. Our reporting is exclusively brought to you by you, the viewer, which is why I want to thank you and ask you to donate at Coutts3.com so we can keep bringing you the other side of the story that the mainstream media won't.